guys, Brandon with Whiskey River. I'm here with Josh of Wyoming Axe Works, and we're in Wyoming, just outside Cheyenne, and I'm out here visiting. We're gonna go to Frontier Days, and yeah, so we had scheduled in an extra day so I could hang out at the shop, which is what we're in.
Yeah, Brandon's second annual trip.
Second annual trip, yep. The first annual trip, I recorded one of these, and the camera I recorded on ate all the files, so we're doing it off the iPhone now because it'll keep it. So we're gonna recreate that conversation that we had last year, and it'll probably be completely different topics. But yeah, so yeah, Zach Bryan tomorrow. We can see Zach Bryan.
Yep, it's gonna be an awesome. The company bought a VIP booth, so free drinks and good seats and tables, and it's gonna be great.
Last year we saw Brooks and Dunn, and him and his girlfriend were on one side, and my buddy and I were on the other side. We didn't even get to stand next to each other, right. So that was pretty awkward. But that was a fun time, and of course Brooks and Dunn is, different than Zach Bryan, so it'd be nice to switch.
It'll be a little bit different crowd tonight for sure.
Yeah, bunch of young people.
Yeah.
Just the opposite of Brooks and Dunn. So yeah, so this is his shop. This is where he does most of his leather work and his saw filing. Do you want to talk a little bit about the shop? This has been a pretty big project for you over the last few years.
Yeah, sure. So when I bought the house, I had it's about 30 by 40 building, and it had a loafing shed off of the one side for horses, all just dirt and gravel floors, and no electricity or anything. And I knew I wanted to make it kind of my dream shop, so started putting together, did all the concrete and all the wiring. So I've got like a 2-bay garage, the dirty side of my shop where I can do all my metalwork and woodwork and stuff. And then the clean side of the shop is 12 by 40 and kind of a galley style, long narrow. You can see part of it behind me. Workbenches. And I kind of set it up where I've got my saw filing vise, which is really important to have good lighting. So I've got 2 great big windows that face that. My saw vise faces, so I got good light filing saws, and then all my sewing machines and my leather stuff in the back. Maybe not like the ideal flow for workspace. It would be nice to have a big center island for cutting leather and working with big hides, but
you got stations set up in here.
It flows pretty good.
Yeah. So I'll do a walkthrough, like a panning shot at the end of this video for you guys. But yeah, so we're sitting next to his saw file vise, which I'll show in the video later. But Josh is one of few people that knows how to file crosscut saw. So do you want to talk about how you got into that? It's kind of like a
sure.
trade.
So in college, I went to the University of Montana, studying forestry for my undergrad, and they've got a woodsman's team, like timber sports competition team. And obviously that's all done with old crosscut saws. At the college level, they don't use any of the modern saws. So I got interested in crosscut saws from then. And then fast forward, 15 years, and I had an opportunity to go to Montana and learn saw filing from a guy in Oregon. They'd been filing saws for like 60 years. So spent a week with him, learning how to file saws, and brought that back and did quite a few practice ones, and then started adding that as part of the business. And just recently I filed my 105th crosscut saw.
Oh wow, so you're keeping track.
Yep, I have a book that I log all of the saws that I do, what length of saw, what type of tooth it was, what the raker and the tooth set, all that stuff was. And then I take a Dremel tool and engrave a saw number on the end of every saw. So if I get that saw back to refile, I know what I had it set at originally. If they want it more aggressive, less aggressive, I can tune it based off what I knew it was when I gave it back to the customer.
I didn't know you did that.
Yep.
That's sweet. That'll be a cool piece of history as you continue to do this. Yeah.
So that is kind of what got me into saw filing. There's probably only a dozen guys doing it commercially in the U.S. and Canada right now. There's quite a few hobby guys that do their own saws, but commercially, not a ton of folks. And I do quite a few saws a year. Forest Service, offices, trail crews, outfitters, backcountry hunters, that kind of stuff, horsemen, and then like conservation corps, Southwest Conservation Corps, I do a lot of saws for them. The Wyoming Conservation Corps, I've done their saws. it's kind of cool just to keep that tradition alive. You know, they still need to use them when they're in the wilderness areas and stuff.
And that's something that a lot of you guys might not know, but in wilderness areas in the U.S. and maybe other land, you're not allowed to use power tools, or when it comes to power saws and such. So the crosscut saw is still a very, very common tool, and an axe as well. That's something that when you're in these wilderness complexes, you can see axe marks for trail clearing and when there's down trees and all of that. So a lot of those people that you listed are probably using it for that style of work.
Like there's an outfitter out of DuBois, Wyoming. I do all of his saws for him, and from like third week of August all the way through like late October, they've got wilderness camps set up for their clients, bringing elk hunters in, and all the wood that they use in that camp they have to cut on site. So all their cooking is done with wood. All the heating, the little potbelly stoves and the wall tents, that's all done with wood. And they've got like 2 guys that pretty much are just cutting wood for the camp.
Cutting and splitting.
Yep. And so we did FE6s and some of the 5-pound Faller's axes, set those up for splitting for those guys, and they're loving them. And then I did 5 saws for them too, and then some small saws that they carry on their saddles.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is like they're not driving in with 4-wheelers, they're not running in with UTVs. This is all horseback. Everything that goes into that camp is hauled in on horse or mule.
Yep.
Yeah. Or by foot. I guess they still walk in too.
A little bit. Most of it they do with their pack stock. But.
Yeah. And so it's very, very important to have tools that fit what they need. You wouldn't want to haul something in that doesn't going to work for what they need it for. Yeah.
Had to give them a little bit of a lesson in taking care of their axes and tools. They had them just like leaned up against trees last year, and when they sent them back to get sharpened, I had to rehang a couple of them because they were real weathered and loose, and hadn't really been taken care of. Heads were all rusty, and so I was like, man, just get a box, like a weatherproof box, and keep all your axes in that. And, keep them out of the weather, keep them oiled. Take some WD and spray down the heads, and they'll last a lot longer, and you'll be a lot happier with the performance if you take care of them.
Definitely. Yeah, we left a Council Tool jersey outside for a year and a half to see what happened to it, and they rust really fast.
Yeah, I bet.
Well,
it's raw steel, right? It doesn't have any.
Yeah, there's no paint on it. Yeah,
and like really no oil or anything, right?
No, it's just that whatever assembly oil comes on the SU finish heads, and within a month it's pretty brown and definitely not good for it if you're going to be trying to use it every day like that. So, So, when did you start, or what kind of got you into the axes? Because that's kind of what started you into the saws.
Yeah. So again, from doing timber sports in college, we did a lot of our training axes were those Keach Timbermen that we first year learned to chop with, and then we graduated into the Tuatai actual race axes when we were chopping, and that really got me hooked on it. And then just being in the forestry business, was interested in the history and the use of axes, and working in the woods, I'd find heads fairly frequently, particularly like working in wildfire scars, and bring them back, clean them up. Not too far away from where my house is, we were working in a burn scar, and I found a 1934 Sager Chemical double bit that's stamped CCC.
Oh, that's cool.
So that was from a Conservation Corps camp in that area. And so just that kind of exposure and knowing about them got me hooked on it. And so I've been kind of doing them on my own, on the side. And then in 2014, I formed an LLC and started doing it actually as a business.
Yeah, we were friends on Facebook probably since right around then. And then last year when I came out for Frontier Days was the first time we met in person. Yeah. And that was pretty wild because that was 8 years after we've been friends on Facebook. So
it's funny how that having never met you, you showed up at my house, we sat down, I don't know if we ate dinner right away or what, but we just shot the shit. Yeah. And last night when you got here, we shot the shit till almost midnight. Yeah. Just sitting around and So just the group, the Axe group and Saw group, is just such an easy going bunch of dudes.
It's interesting because when I traveled like this more before COVID, when I used to do trade shows, it was I rarely showed up to someone's house and was like, this guy's nothing like I expected. You know, like Facebook, Instagram, those, and video style, this kind of thing, like gives you a really good snapshot of who the person is. So it makes it pretty easy. It's not like you're like, it's not like a first date where blind date where you're like, this is awkward, you know, we just hang out and, you know, we have the same interests in a lot of things, including like mechanical things and cars and trucks and things like that too. So
yeah, last year when you were here, you filmed some video of the road grader.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And he used to do Jeeps. He used to be into Jeeps.
Yep.
The Moab experience when you were younger.
Yeah, and 4-wheelers and stuff. I got those 2 quads out in the garage that I'm working on right now.
Yeah, and I've got most of my background's in Volkswagens, but still translates to off-road stuff too, and you know, all of that. So
and always sending each other 3-wheeler videos.
Yeah, 3-wheeler videos.
I'd love to find one of those Honda Big Reds.
I know.
We had one on the ranch growing up, and I used to ride around chasing cows. It was like one of the 350 Big Reds.
Yeah.
And that thing was so much fun. It was a death trap.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I sold my 110.
Oh, did you?
Jack has, the guy that I was out here with last year, he has a couple Big Reds, and he's planning on bringing them up to our place and in Wisconsin, and we're gonna trail ride them. I think those are 250s, or they might be 200s, but they're.
I think the biggest one they made was either 300 or 350.
Yeah.
And that one had
the 4-strokes. Yeah. And then they had the 2-stroke RR. That's crazy death trap. Of course, we all dream of having one of those, but I probably wouldn't ride it ever because I'm a wuss. I don't need to die. But yeah, it's just very interesting starting off with axes and vintage tools and stuff. There's just piles and piles, especially in this section of the shop. It's like there's stuff everywhere. And I take a lot of inspiration off of this area, and we've talked a lot about how we're setting up the new building. And I like the controlled, organized chaos that's in here.
Yeah. I posted a video on Instagram not too long ago of like a bunch of different shots of my of my shop, and it like looks kind of cluttered, and I always feel like it's a little cluttered.
Yeah.
But then folks are like, "No, man, it's awesome."
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta have cool, interesting stuff on the walls, and you know, just
it can't just be it can't just be like a white room that you sit and work in all day. Like if you wanted that, you'd be in cubicle land. So,
right.
Yeah, and we're trying to do that with the warehouse and this store building is kind of make it so that like anywhere you look, it's like there's something interesting to look at, and helps with get you through the day. So, what do you do for a profession? Because this is a part-time thing.
Yep. So I left forestry a little over a year ago. Had been working in the woods, running logging crews and stuff for most of my career, but had an opportunity to switch to go full-time with the fire service. I'd been a volunteer fireman pretty much since I turned 18, but I had an opportunity to go work as a chief officer with the local commendation department, and so I've been there a year now, and so doing the full-time fireman thing, which is pretty fun. I was showing Brandon earlier, I've got one of the council tool Halligans in the back of my truck, and how much I like that, how much better it is than most of the, you know,
mass-produced,
cheaper commercial ones.
Yeah, he's got a Halligan wrapped in fiber tape,
fire wrap.
Fire wrap, and the FE6 in the truck with it as a mate because they marry together.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's cool because a lot of times we send out these fire tools, and I'm not big in I don't like have a bunch of firemen that are friends or anything, so I don't get to see the tools actually get used. Right, we ship them out, and that's like I see pictures online of axes and guys splitting wood or felling trees or camping with hatchets, but I don't get to see like the fire side. Most guys aren't posting those pictures, and so it's really cool to see this. I mean, your Halligan has seen some,
seen some use.
It's dirty, and it's like it's you can definitely tell it's been used and all that. So, and that's just a product that they just came out with.
Yeah,
a couple years ago.
Yep,
year and a half ago, something like that.
But they obviously put a lot of research time into it. Like it's got all the stuff, you know, to be fully dressed. Like the hand tuning that most people would do like on a pro bar.
Yeah.
It's already all done from the factory. And so as far as like your depth marks for breaching doors, it's already all etched on the tool. Nice sharp shoulders for like off angle hammering on it with the axe. Just a super nice tool.
Yeah. And I always say that pretty much everyone could find use in a Halligan. They're a little pricey. But like,
They
if
are,
you wanted
but
something
you
that,
won't find like a stronger
Like pry bar. Yeah.
for around the house or like
Yeah.
working in the shop. I clipped the end of a culvert the other day, grading roads with my road grader, and came back. Well, the next morning I was headed to work, and I pulled over, grabbed my Halligan out of the back of my truck, and used the fork on the Halligan to bend the culvert back open.
Yeah,
I was like, man, these are used for everything.
Yeah,
nowadays.
yeah. We demoed a bunch of walls in the shop at the house with it, just ripping studs out. I mean, like, you want to talk about something that you can just swing it, just taking studs out and ripping drywall down. It's literally made for that. And so
the adze end on them works really nice for hanging doors. Like if you have a pre-hung door, you can set the adze under the door and then step on the pike, and it'll lever up just enough that you can lift the whole door.
Wow. So a gentle way of dealing with doors. A lot more gentle than that tool is designed for.
Yeah, for sure. Normally it's made for breaking doors.
Yeah,
not installing them.
That's funny. Oh man. So let's go back to the saw filing, because that's something that a lot of folks don't know about. What are your main tools that you use for saw filing? We went over that last year, and that was something that I learned a bunch about.
Yeah, so like the first step, I think they can probably see this.
Yeah.
In setting up the saws is you got to make sure that all your teeth are at the same height and on the same radius around the length of the saw. So you use this is a Gibbs long joiner, and so you use this to ride over the teeth, and it's got a file mounted in it, and it actually takes the tips off of all the teeth all the way across, and it leaves a little shiny flat spot. And that way you know that all the teeth are at the same height, so every tooth is doing the same amount of work all the way through the saw.
Because most crosscut saws are not level. The teeth are not level.
Yeah, there's an arc to the whole saw, and that's just part of the efficiency of them the way they cut. So the first step is to take a long joiner and make sure the saw is joined all the way across at the right height. And that like flat spot on the tip of the teeth is what then when you go to file the teeth, you're watching that flat bright spot until that just disappears. Like I'm sure when you've been sharpening axes, you've seen like if you look straight on at the bit before it's sharp, like you'll have light reflected down the bit, and that means that you either got a wire edge or you're not quite sharp. But like once it's like razor sharp, you don't get any reflection down that whole edge of the bit. And same way with like the tooth on a crosscut saw, once you get it pointed all the way down, you don't get any light reflected off the very tip. So that's why like when I angle my saw vise into the window, I'm looking for that ambient light to light up the tips of the teeth. So when I'm pointing them up, as soon as that light goes away, you know that
it's sharp.
It's sharp. But you don't want to go extra because then that tooth's shorter than its neighbors and it's doing less work.
So you want to just get the light.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it takes good vision, and unfortunately at 40 years old, my vision's starting to kind of suck, so I have to wear cheaters when I'm filing saws just to be able to see that. And then I've got an adjustable arm lamp. So like if it's in the evening or whatever, then I can pull that lamp over and really get good light. So after I've got the saw joined, I'll go through and set my initial height on all the rakers. So the like snake tongue shaped forked teeth in a crosscut saw, that's the raker, and that's basically a little chisel that as it goes by, the alternating teeth sever the wood fibers on either side, and then that raker goes through and peels that out just like a wood chisel. So having those at the right height that they're working efficiently, they need to be, if you're looking at the saw up, they need to be a little bit shorter than the teeth, and I'm usually 12 thousandths shorter, so we're talking fairly fairly minute measurements for doing it all by hand. So I'll set my initial raker height with this old Atkins raker gauge, and it's got sloped plates here that help you get your teeth angle or your raker angle set, and they're cool old tools, patented 1825 in Canada.
That's old.
But they're hardened steel shoes on it, so you just run your file right across the shoes, and it doesn't mar up the shoes at all. But then set your raker height, and it's got two little set screws in here that you can raise and lower those to make your initial height. So I'll set all my raker height initially with that, and then a little bit more modern
That's
tool.
that's the thousandth of an inch coming into play.
Yeah, so it's an old Morin gauge that has had a adapter bolted to it to run a micrometer on, or a dial indicator. And so I'll use this to go through and verify my measurement all the way across. And I've got a little Sharpie mark on there for 10 thousandths, which is usually like my target at first. So I'll verify it with this. So this is like a very new adaptation.
Yeah. But makes
to
it
use a
faster.
dial indicator, faster and much more accurate.
Yeah.
The dial indicator is great for that. So once I've got all the rakers set, I'll go through and point all my teeth. So you'll do all the one side and then take the saw out of the vise, flip it over, clamp it back in, do all the other side. And once I've got all those teeth pointed up, then I can swage my rakers. So I've got them filed up to a nice 30-degree point. And then I take a real small little fine-tipped hammer and hammer the end of the tooth over so they curl. And that's that real clean chisel effect that grabs that wood and like makes the nice little curls.
Yeah.
And so I'll, hammer, check it with the dial indicator, hammer, check it with the dial indicator until I've got 12 thousandths or 15 thousandths or 20 thousandths, whatever I'm aiming for that particular saw across the whole length. And then I'll make sure my set, so the tips of the teeth are bent out, alternating all the way down the saw. And depending on the style of the saw, like if it's a plain gauge or plain taper saw, the plate of the saw is the same gauge thickness at the teeth as it is in the spine. So those saws you need more set. So as you get through the wood, the kerf doesn't
wider.
The kerf doesn't pinch on the plate.
Yeah.
Like the really, really good high quality saws, like the Royal Chinooks, they were crescent ground. So the handle ends are thicker than the spine, and then they're thicker at the teeth than at the spine. So they had a great big grinding wheel, and they crescent grind that whole saw plate.
I think I saw the grinding marks on one of your saws over there. Yeah.
And so by crescent grinding them, that spine is still nice and strong, kind of like an I-beam construction, right? The spine's still strong, but it's narrower than the teeth, so you don't have to run as much set in the teeth. And the less set you run, the less wood you're removing with every stroke, the more efficient the saw is, so the better the saw cuts.
Yeah.
So those crescent ground saws are really like the much better saws.
Okay.
But
and the grinder marks on it, or what's going to tell you if a vintage example of a crosscut saw is?
Yes and no. Like really, the best way is a pair of dial indicator calipers and actually check the saw gauge.
Yeah.
At the teeth, the ends, and then in the middle of the spine.
Okay.
That's much more reliable than looking for the grinding marks.
Yeah.
Because somebody could have taken like flap disc to clean the rust off.
Yeah.
Kind of similar marks.
Yeah. Definitely.
But yeah, so you got to go through and set those teeth to make sure that they're the right offset tooth to left between the left and the right cutter. And I typically do that with this Morin trip hammer. So the saw sits in here, this rests against the tooth, and then you strike it like with a ball peen or a heavy hammer. And it's got a real precision ground
angle
right here.
Yeah.
And when you whack it, it bends the tooth to that angle, and you just hold it up against the saw. You can do it with like a regular hand anvil that's got a little bit of radius and hammer on it. You can also use like a pair of saw set pliers. These I really only ever use on small saws, like a little one-man saw with the short teeth. All set with, this is an Apex 2-setter set of pliers. And I'll use this on small saws, but pretty much all the big saws I do with this Morin trip hammer. And this one's kind of cool because it's produced in 1926. It's marked Forest Service. And it's got like the Seattle Morin registered stamping on it.
Yeah.
And I've got like 4 or 5 other ones because every time I see them, I buy them.
Yeah.
But this one's by far my nicest because it's got the Forest Service stamping and a real clear date stamp.
One cool thing that I mentioned last time we talked about this was that most of these tools, if you found them, or if an average person found them at a garage sale, they had no idea what these are, or flea market or auction, and be like, what is this? And that's one thing that's probably affecting these, is the fact that they just get tossed. Yeah. And nobody knows what they are.
Yeah, or they're missing like the adjustment screws and stuff.
Yeah.
Like this one's a Simmons, like really good condition for the age. But yeah, if you saw these sitting on a table at an
yeah.
auction or whatever,
Most people wouldn't even have any clue
no.
what they are. Yeah.
But like up on that shelf up there, I've got piles and piles of them.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as they're not unreasonably priced, whenever I see them, I buy them. A lot of times just so I have spare parts. Like I can steal screws out of them, or like the thumb screws, or any of that stuff.
Yeah, so if you guys come across any saw filing tools, hit them up.
Yeah, you can always reach out to me on Instagram with pictures or questions about saw tools you find. And you know, they haven't been making them in like 60 years at least. Yeah. So they're kind of hard to find.
They were common. I mean, like these were like, you know, our grandfathers could have had these tools and been able to saw. Like this was an art that many people knew back in 100 years ago. So
like these Gibbs long joiners, they're super hard to find, and when you do, they're pretty high priced. So like those are great if your guy can find them, because you can turn around and sell them for pretty decent money if you can get them cheap.
Yeah, and no one's recreating any of these tools. It's not like there's a saw filing store that you can go and like buy these tools from, or a kit. Like you're pretty much focused on only vintage.
Well, and like you and I have talked in the past about like the quality of files, like hand files.
Yeah.
You know, you've had a couple different like new old stock boxes of vintage files. Like the new files just aren't nearly as strong. Like they don't stay sharp as long, and even just the patterns of those files are getting hard to find.
Yeah.
And so like I'm always like any of the old files I can find, I'm buying them, and like.
Yeah, what are your standard cuts on them? They're like a standard bastard file?
Yeah, I do a lot of bastard files, but I'll take them to the grinder and I'll grind any of the teeth on the sides off, because I want safe edge files, because I don't want those teeth grinding into the adjacent teeth like when I'm sharpening. This one's double cut. Yeah, and it's an old one the USA made, not the Mexico or Portugal ones.
Yeah.
And then like slim taper files. This is a Karate Italian file. They're like the only new manufacturer that makes really good quality files, but they're expensive. We can post some pictures later. I've got trays of files that I've bought, old school vintage files.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of hoarding them. Just because like, particularly on a rusty saw, the rust really is hard on the teeth, and you can pretty much use up a file by the time you finish a crosscut.
Yeah.
So I try to keep a bunch of them in stock, and I'll use like a junk file to go through and make that initial pass to get the rust off and get through that hard steel, and throw that file away, and then save my good vintage US stuff.
Yeah. Well, and that's a triangular shaped file there.
Yeah. So I run both. This is a 3 square smooth is what it's called, and this is another Nicholson, and it's like a 8-inch. These are really nice for filing in between on the rakers to get that raker depth.
Mm-hmm.
You need that to be fairly thin, those rakers, to be able to swage them out, to pound out the curl on them. And so these files are really nice for making that depth and keeping them even left to right, the triangular files. And then triangular files are also good for shaping up teeth. But I like this, I call them a knife file, another Nicholson, that it's like tapered.
Like a butter knife.
Yeah, yep. And then they're safe on the back. They're not real aggressive on this front edge. But because they're real thin on this edge, you can get in between the teeth and really shape them up nice without getting into the teeth next to them. And these have become really my favorite files.
Are those still available to buy new?
I think Karate has these available new, but I probably got 60 of them, new old stock, in my cabinet. So I'm pretty well set for a while. But I've got them both in bastard cut and in second cut, which is nice to be able to make nice smooth finishes.
Cool. On the axe topic, what's your favorite user / what's your favorite pattern? What is your go-to for axes?
I'm a big Connie fan. Like I've got a couple Connecticut's, like that black one I was showing you earlier on one of your 28C handles. they swing nice, and if you're out like actually doing falling with them, you can get nice big chips out of them. And I think they just are reminiscent of the race axes that I used in college. And I've got a couple of the Timbermen that are still users of mine, and then I've got like couple Australian race axes too. But like for an everyday user, those Connecticut's are real nice. And then like a 3-pound boys Connecticut on a short handle, those are sweet to use too.
Yeah, and are pretty hard to find.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, boys axe Connecticut's. I feel like that's, if you're gonna ask a collector what a desirable axe is, that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like Sager Chemical, I've always thought is a real cool brand. I think the history is cool. You don't see many single bits, but a lot of double bits, and I've got a fair number. I think the earliest one I have is 1919, and then I've got all the way up to like mid 40s.
Yeah.
I've got a big Puget Sound. It's like a 43.
Yeah, we've been getting a bunch of those coming to the auction, the Sager Chemicals, or at least the first couple auctions we did. And it's just they're just really crazy.
I don't know if you've ever tried that like hand sharpen one.
No.
But there's something about their chemical process and their annealing. The bits are really hard on them. They hold an edge really nice. They're kind of a pain to sharpen, but they do hold an edge really nice. And I think any of the axes and tools that were stamped with a date make them just a little more unique.
Yeah, definitely. Though I will say that all the ones that we got all had full bits, probably because they were hard to destroy by sharpening wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of those double bits, they got matched sides, and they all looked pretty nice. And we had a bunch of 20s and 30s era ones, which I feel like is probably the heat of their production.
I think other axes that are interesting to me are the ones that like have some sort of like provenance or like a little bit about the history. I was showing that broad axe earlier that has got the Forest Service and CCC stamp on it.
Yep.
Any of the CCC stuff is pretty cool because when it was produced and probably how it was used. And then like I've got one of the those Oregon State Forest Service
you should grab
double
that.
bits.
Can you grab it?
Yeah.
This is a new old stock.
Yeah, so these came up on auction. Online auction, what, 4 years ago probably? 4 or 5 years ago?
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, probably.
But they were in Oregon State surplus property on their online auction. And there was a whole pallet of them. And they had the original like green wax covers on the bits. And they've got the Oregon Forest Service paint on them. They've got the OF stamped on them and FC, Forestry Commission.
And it's Collins legitimate.
Yeah, Collins legitimate.
I mean, it's not even
like
just that alone.
Original Collins handle. It's got the OF stamped on the end of the handle. Western pattern, very traditional firefighting double bit. And they probably bought hundreds of these, in the 40s and 50s. And they probably were sitting in the back of some fire cache for years. And they're like, well, we ain't going to use these. We're going to put them on auction. And I bet the property manager that ran that auction was blown away at this pallet of old axes. Yeah. Like, how come this thing's brand like $4,000? Yeah,
because they're selling like old hoses and just random odd stuff. I mean,
just busted ass old mowers and stuff.
Yeah, most of the government surplus stuff is all like, it's after the government's like, yeah, we're done with this.
This is clapped out.
Yeah, this is like,
it's garbage.
Yeah, it costs us more to keep this than it doesn't. And then, so it's, if you've ever bid on government auctions, you definitely know what I'm talking about. And in this case, it's like new old stock.
And there was a bunch of them. There were flint edges too. They had the like original flint edge arrowhead stencil on them.
Yeah, with the green wax.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it quickly went out of my price range to buy that whole pallet. But I think there were a couple of guys in the U.S. and a couple of Australians that went in together on it. And a bunch of them ended up getting shipped to Australia. And then some of the ones that stayed in the U.S. Got, I think, offered up to certain collectors that they knew were looking for them.
Yep.
And, I paid a fair bit for it, but it's a cool piece with cool history.
Yeah.
And
That's something you'll keep around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With my forestry and fire background, it's just neat to have one that came from their state forestry firefighting agency.
It's got a bunch of personality to it.
Yeah.
Even if it wasn't all of that, it's still a new old stock legitimist.
Yeah.
Western pattern.
Right.
Still super rare. So.
Yeah. And now I've got a second one that's more of a Michigan pattern that I bought from you a couple years ago.
Which I bought in Michigan.
It's also a legitimist.
Yeah. Yep. And that's new old stock.
Yep.
Never been used.
Yep.
I bought that out of Traverse City, Michigan, at an antique store. It was the only axe in the whole antique store. You ever do that? Where you walk through the whole antique store and there's you're like, come on, just have one junky half hatchet. I just want to see an axe so it's not a total bust.
Right. And you always got to look like in the dusty back corners
Yeah.
for that handle leaning up.
Yep. I remember I was standing on, it's like a 3-story, I think it's a 3-story antique mall there right in downtown, and it was the top floor. It was like one of the last rooms I was in. I've actually bought 2 of them. Fun fact. So I went to that antique store with Gretchen. We were on a sales call up there, and I found one and I bought it. And that's the one that you got. And then I went to, I left or whatever. And then a year later, I come back and I was like, I should stop in there and see if that guy's got any axes. And he had a second one, just exactly.
Do you think at home he had a box of them? And was like, well, if this one sells, I'll pull another one out of storage and throw it out.
Yeah, it was exactly a year later, and I bought it, and then I ended up selling that. I can't remember who I sold that to, but yeah, I ended up selling it. It's just funny that it's like, what are the chances? It's a total deja vu. Same exact head,
right?
Unused, or same exact axe, unused, and yeah, leaned in the same spot. There's hordes of stuff, guys. If you look,
Right.
If you ask around. Don't ever go somewhere and don't ask, and leave without asking, because that's how you find axes.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of trees in Wyoming, but there's pretty good forestry history. I was showing that book earlier.
Yeah.
But, I had a auctioneer. He's since passed away, but he knew that I was collecting axes. He collected crosscuts, and so we talked a bunch about crosscuts and stuff. And he knew I was collecting axes. So when he'd go do an estate sale, if there were axes, he'd take pictures of them for me right away.
Yeah.
Before he even listed them on his website, and he'd be like, "Hey, let me know what you want," and I'd be like, "I'll take the first 3 and the last one." And
yeah.
He'd set them aside for me, and I'd go to his
Sweet.
shop and pick them up, and he was only charging me super reasonable prices for them. Those kind of relationships are super invaluable to get to pick over stuff before it hits the
and the
streets.
cool thing, or a trick that I use with that is the first few transactions with the guy, just take everything. Yeah, I mean, even if it's not something you want, right? You're gonna lose $40-$50. Man, this is just a Michigan single bit and it's Chinese or something. But eventually, you're gonna hit it where you get some new old stock thing or some rare pattern or something you really, really enjoy.
Yeah.
That goes with all antiques.
And be fair and straight up with them on the prices. That big Sager chemical back there that I've got, he had hanging on his cabin up in the mountains. And I went up there he wanted to show me his crosscut collection in his cabin. And he had that hanging behind his fireplace. And I was like, would you sell it? And he's like, yeah, I'd sell it. And I was like, well, what do you want for it? And he's like, how's $70? And I said, no, that's way too cheap.
Yeah.
And I gave him a couple $100 for it.
Yeah.
And just that kind of relationship building, ever since then, he was like, he'd tease me that I was lowballing him.
Yeah, because he's like, that other one was a couple $100, but
this one's stamped wear safety glasses, so you can take that right too.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a good negotiating tactic to pay high, because then the deals start coming and they start pulling stuff out.
Yeah, and bundling is another good. I'll buy all of them for a fixed price versus negotiating individual prices on each axe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the bigger the collection, the better you get per piece, rate-wise, usually. Right. So, yeah.
And then you get to unbox a giant crate on
on my Instagram. Yeah. We've been buying axes like crazy, man, and I've been just really, really, really focusing on building this auction.
How long is your auction's going live right now?
Yeah,
is it still open?
Yeah, it's still open. Oh, I'm recording on the phone. What's the date today?
It says 22nd.
22nd. So yeah, I think it ends 28th or 29th. Auction's going really well, and we've got 100 lots, which is
there's some awesome stuff on there. If you're a cleaver guy, we spent a bunch of time last night talking about cleavers.
Yeah, we did.
If you're a cleaver guy, you need to go check that auction out because there's 8 or 10 like super nice
Yeah,
cleavers.
I think there's 8 on there. Yep. And then I just got that crate I just unboxed. That's got a bunch of cleavers in it. I think there's another 8 there at least. They're all mid-sized cleavers, so it's, you know, like for guys who are processing deer and stuff, perfect size cleaver.
Yeah. Or like if you do a lot of ribs on the smoker or something, having the cleaver's pretty sweet.
Yep.
Or crab, like I did a bunch of king crab on the grill on New Year's, and pull out the cleaver and hacking.
It's just fun. It's entertaining. Yeah. Usually when you're cooking with a cleaver, you've got people over, because you're cooking big enough. You got people over, and you know it's good to have a cleaver around to be like.
Or just pull an axe out of your collection.
Yeah.
Chopping up ribs with an axe.
Yeah. So it's been crazy to, you know, talk to collectors and try to, you know, buy the pieces that they're not the holy grail pieces that they want to keep for their whole life, but they're like, you know, I'd like to pass this on to somebody who's going to enjoy it, or pass it on to somebody who's going to put the time in to restore it. And so I've been learning a bunch about vintage stuff. It's like, as a handle guy, you know, like mainly my background with vintage axes is handle based. I mean, when you and I talk about axes, that's what I'm always looking at. I was looking at the top of the eye and always looking at the pattern, length, you know, that kind of stuff. And so if any of you guys have met me in person, it's like that. It's like I'm more obsessed over the handle and the size of the eye and such. But so my knowledge is very limited in patterns and years and makers and things like that. And just so I've been just sucking in like a sponge and learning, and all of us at the warehouse have been just like learning all these new you know, different stuff and variants, because so many different heads. But yeah, and it's just like Christmas all over again. I'd like to build a wall that is like for hanging axe heads on, weld up some brackets with some eye bolts or something, or not eye bolts, lag bolts that they can hang on, and just do a whole wall in the new office of just heads. So that when people are up, they can window shop, you know, they can dig through, like kind of have the big bit stuff and some hatchets and some boys axe and double bit, kind of have it in sections.
Like some information on a hang tag or something, so it's easy.
Yeah, just like you got with your saws here.
Yeah.
Yep. And then that's a wall we can build auctions off of, so that'll be pretty cool. Right now I'm working on trying to I want to buy one of those. I've always used them for taking rivets out of frames, just like a air chisel, I guess.
Yeah.
Or it looks like a drill, right? You just, I want to pick one of those up for the warehouse so we can start taking, because a lot of these collections are coming without handles, but the handle chunk's still in the eye. I got to figure out a way to speed that up, because we do spend a lot of time. I mean, even some of our auction stuff we're selling still got the handle in it, or the chunk of handle in it.
Do you drill them out and then pound them out with
a hammer? Yeah, we actually, those Axe Gang handles that we sell, we use those as drifts. We actually take a flap disc and narrow them just a little bit in the shoulder, and then we just wail on them with a mallet, and you know, that's pretty. I mean, we got a lot of C grades of those, so that's what we use as drifts. And it goes quick if you get set up on it, but at the same time, I would like to just be able to go and drive them out. So that's the next step. Earplugs and lots of earplugs.
They're loud, that's for sure.
Yeah, but yeah, we've been getting that, and I've probably bought close to 1,000 heads so far this year, or 1,000 vintage heads, and some have handles on them, of course. I'm hoping to double that for the rest of the year. So when you get that many heads in, it's like you're learning, and you're destined to have some things in there.
You're creating your own library.
Yeah, exactly, in my head, you know, and that's just the volume side's pretty fun. So, yeah. So yeah, hit him up if you see any crosscut saws or crosscut saw tools. Hit me up.
Or handles, like crosscut handles, like the
you want to show them what a handle looks like? Because this is something that I've seen at antique stores and things before I knew anything about crosscut saws. I never knew what this was, or what this looked like.
So a couple different styles of handles. This is a Simmons Royal Chinook Western style handle. They're super versatile. You can rotate the saw and the handle for felling versus bucking. Just a real comfortable handle. They've got a nice hand guard on them to keep your knuckle from banging on the end of the saw. So these are super nice. The vintage ones, hard to come by, and when you do find them, they're expensive to get, especially ones in this condition with the original paint, like actually stamped on the handle.
Yeah.
That it's a number 395 handle. So these are like the cream of the crop of handles. And then like this is a loop handle, or new old stock Diston.
And newer, right? Like that. What year range is that?
This is probably still 50s. But yeah, super good condition. This is a loop style handle. These won't work on every saw. They have to have the little notch in the end of the handle for a loop handle to work. These two came on a new old stock saw that I bought this year. But yeah, loop style handles. And then I don't have the wood with it right now. But this is a new manufactured Western style handle. These are made by Flicker Forge in Canada. They're like by far the nicest. Like they're way nicer to use than the old handles even, just because the modern like tooling to thread the shaft and the tap the wing nut. They're super smooth. They stay tight. Like there's no play at all in the wing nut.
They're cast brass.
Yeah.
Yep. Which is pretty cool. They look badass.
They do look really nice. Yeah. Super nice handles, and like price wise, they're much more reasonable to buy these brand new manufactured handles. They're like $140 on eBay, than to buy like a pair of for $250 a pair of vintage handles.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got a whole rack and a whole box of vintage handles, but I really like those Flicker Forge handles.
Yeah, and they're out of Canada.
Yep.
And they have a website.
They do, but I don't know if they sell handles on their website.
Oh, okay.
I think they're just selling them on eBay.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah, but they're buying it now, so
yeah,
it's
so
not
pretty
like
easy.
Yeah,
pretty easy.
Yeah, and they ship super fast.
Cool. Yeah, they ship out of the U.S., so he was telling me about that earlier today. So leatherworking. We haven't talked about leatherworking.
Nope, we haven't.
We've been on Axes and Crosscuts house. So one way that you and I started working together was the guild projects. Josh is a member of the guild, Whiskey River Guild, which is a group of makers, collective of makers that kind of all do each piece of a product, I guess, and then we sell it on the site. So we're going to be switching all the guild projects over to auctions, onto our auction site from now on. Instead of putting them as single items, and we're going to be doing one-offs. So right now we've got Josh has got a flying fox head on his bench, which was came from Evan Watson, who did an engraving on it. I'm going to grab it. It's sitting right here. So right here, you can see it's got this hand. Evan Watson, the hand engraver on Instagram, did the hand engraving on that. And
it's the second one he's done for you, and like it was so hard to ship on the first one when I had it in the shop, just because I've always loved that filigree engraving, and I really wanted to keep that first one.
Yeah, and we did that. We called that the Phoenix Fox, and that was a flame pattern or like a faded,
like sunburst kind of handle.
On the handle and the leather.
Yep.
And so this one we're doing a little bit more of a Western theme. Still trying to figure out the leather. We've been talking about it. We talked about it last night. Maybe some tooling work in there. And then I've got white oak 19HC handles. A small batch of those coming out in the cutoffs that we have left over from the 30C run. I've got some shorter 20-inch boards, so it's like, well, let's use those up for the 19HC. So we're going to do a white oak with the dark stain in the handle, and that'll be available in the auction sometime this year. So pretty excited about that. But yeah, so Josh sews leather. What got you into that?
Really, it was kind of customer driven. I was doing axes and selling axes and doing axe restorations, and people started asking for sheaths to go with them. And as you know, like sheaths are kind of hard to come by, especially quality. And so I started making them, but I wasn't sewing them. Like at first I was just riveting them. And then I got set up to hand sew and was doing a bunch of hand sewing, but it's kind of tedious.
I didn't know you did that.
It looks gorgeous, the hand stitch does, but it's definitely slow. And so just as that market share of my business started to grow, I started tooling up. We did a tour of the sewing machines earlier today. You know, I've got 4 in the shop right now, and can do everything from canvas, light leather, heavy leather. And so I've been doing, you know, wallets, Bible covers, purses, handbags, tack repair,
This
axes, belts. You have to do a lot of belts.
Yeah.
Whipped up a belt for Brandon this morning.
I got a
He
new
was
belt
complaining
today.
about his stretched out. So
Yeah, I had an old belt that was stretched out, just flopping around. So yeah, we sold this up.
yeah, so started doing more leather, and leather's fun because it's a little bit more creative than
Soft
island,
Yeah,
which can be
pretty scientific.
little tedious.
Yeah.
So it's fun to have the creative outlet of doing leather work, and it's fun for sure.
Yeah, I haven't done much leather work. I would like to get into it. It's like an easy thing to do inside, like in the winter too. It's it's like I weld for my creative outlet, but like the shop gets really cold. And I could be doing craft style things like crafting leather in the house, and obviously this is a pretty big shop space for doing leather work, but you could tool down and like do some pretty basic things in your house. So for us guys who have to get through our long cold winters,
well, we get plenty of that in Wyoming as well.
You do, yeah. No, you and I both do. But, I mean, there's some people here in Florida that are like, "What are you talking about, winters?"
They need the hobbies in the summer, so
Yeah.
they can get out in the AC.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
But plus, just having a stockpile of leather makes the shop smell really good.
yeah, it does. Yeah, yeah. I had someone come over to our warehouse the other day for the first time. They've been friends with me now since we moved for a year and a half, and it was their first tour of the warehouse. They're like, "God, it smells amazing in here." It's like hickory, yeah. And we just got a load of handles in, and so it's like there was dust everywhere because that's how it is when you sort handles. And I forget what the smell is because I'm around it all the time. So it's funny when people come over and they're like, "Man, it smells amazing in here. It smells like hickory chips, like from smoking." It's like, yeah. I'm glad that it smells good in here. It's a bunch of sweaty dudes. But yeah. So, yeah. Do you have anything else you want to touch on?
Second year at CFD.
Yeah.
So we walked around a little bit last year and kind of checked out the trade show and like all the different vendors and stuff. What are you hoping to see at CFD this year?
Well, I'm really hoping to see the truck wagon guys. We talked about that last night. Last year when we showed up, there was a guy who my friend George, who I've done a video with, knew that was like in the competition because they have chuck wagon competitions. It's like a cook-off of these guys who cook off of wagons and old, just like they would have went out with cowboys and cooked for them. And if you guys have never heard of chuck wagon competitions, you just Google that. I'm sure YouTube videos come up and it's just epic. Every tool on it is vintage and it's,
Right.
just
Well, they
awful.
want like the entire thing, like they set up a whole scene around their chuck wagon in the competition area. And so they want it all to be like super authentic looking.
Yeah.
And so like they've got gold pans on the side of the wagons and like
They're dressed.
Yeah,
They're dressed like in full authentic,
all cast
1850s. Yeah.
iron and antique shovels and axes.
Yeah.
They're splitting all their firewood right there to cook over.
Yeah.
And like they got crosscut saws and stuff hanging on the sides of their wagons. So it'll be cool to try to catch up with those guys, like when they're not in the middle of competition or when they're not breaking down, and try to shoot the shit with them a little bit.
Because we showed up last year and we were an hour late. They were all packing up, so it was like you don't want to be like, "Hey guys!"
And it was the last weekend of Frontier Days, so they were like packing up for good.
Yeah, for sure. So that's what I'm excited about is seeing those. Allegedly, there's a guy there that has a 30C on an axe hung on the side of his wagon. So we'll
have to hunt him down.
We'll have to hunt him down and see if I can find that handle. How many do you think there are? It seemed like
there's probably 20, 25.
Yeah, a couple dozen. Yeah. So yeah, that'll be fun. And then also, I had a lot of fun hanging out in the, what's it called? The comic tent? What was it?
The tent? Crown Royal tent?
Crown Royal tent. Yeah, I had a lot of fun hanging out.
Yeah, the cowboy bar.
Yeah. That was a good old time.
Maybe we won't get hailed on this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
We got it on the drive up. Hopefully we won't get it at the show.
Yeah, I forgot about that. It like torrential downpour and we were all crammed in this tent.
They packed like 600 people into that bar tent.
Yeah.
Just so it started breaking out of the rain.
Yep. And then the sunshine came out.
Yeah.
Because it's
Wyoming.
Wyoming.
And then it got humid.
Yeah, and then it got really humid. And then the concert started. And it was, But, so yeah, I'm excited to hang out in there. There's some just very interesting people that hang out in there. So people watching's fun and chit-chatting. Both of us can talk to pretty much anybody, so.
Maybe on Monday morning we'll run in town and go watch the parade. Because the parade's kind of cool. So like the beginning of the parade is all antique, restored, historic wagons. And there's a whole group of volunteers. The whole Cheyenne Frontier Days is all run by volunteers. It's a corporation, but it's all volunteer based. And they own a ton of these wagons that they pull in the parade. And there's a subgroup, a committee of the volunteers called Wagon Doctors. And I want to get into that group so bad because it's like all my niches, right?
Yeah.
So it's woodworking, leatherworking, like ironwork. But like that's the hardest committee to get into. But they restore and maintain all these wagons to be pulled in the parade.
Wow.
And so they've got everything from like old hearses, milk wagons, mail wagons, water wagons, stagecoaches, a bunch of stagecoaches, all that cool stuff. And I've always said that it'd be really cool to do like a antique hardware store wagon, like a couple of donkeys and a wagon, and just load it down with like old tools, like saws, axes,
boxes of nails and
picks,
yeah,
nails, you know, rolls of canvas, like antique wooden stools, and like have a hardware store wagon, and have that for the parade. I always thought that would be pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be sweet. Well, you have to get on that committee.
Yeah, right.
You still got a lot of time left.
I'll keep knocking on doors.
It's like an invite-only committee.
It is. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I believe it. I mean, that's an art in itself. There's a lot of folks on YouTube that like that's their job, is just restoring old stagecoaches or old wagons. And
like I'd pay my own money to go to wheelwright school to like learn how to make the wooden wheels, just to come back and like try to get on the committee.
Yeah,
like I can make wooden wheels, I promise.
Yeah, I'll do the thing you guys don't want to do. That's funny. Yeah. So we'll definitely Monday morning, because I fly out Monday evening. We should definitely swing down there and go to the parade.
Try to stop by 307 Hatchet House, the local axe throwing place, and introduce you to the owner there. And I've got a couple flying foxes, so maybe we'll take those down there and try to pitch them. And,
what are you most excited about for Frontier Days this year?
Definitely the concert. The Zach Bryan concert's going to be a ton of fun tomorrow night. And then next weekend on Saturday night, I've got Cody Johnson and Whiskey Myers tickets.
Oh, man.
And that's going to be a riot of a show. Whiskey Myers always puts on just such an epic show.
I saw them at Billy Bob's.
Yeah, I saw them last year. They played at Terry Bison Ranch here in town. Out in the pasture. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah, they can rock.
Yeah, and then I've got rodeo tickets on Sunday for the finals next weekend, so we'll go to the rodeo. And I'm sure Monday at work I'll be like super sunburned and probably a little hungover. Ready to go back to work for some vacation. Yeah,
you're definitely spoiled being this close to this event.
Yeah,
because people come from all over the world for this. It brings all types.
Mostly Colorado.
Mostly Colorado. There was a family of 4 people on my bus ride from the airport to the rental car place, and they asked where I was going, and they were just flabbergasted that this event like still existed. And you know, there's like 250,000 people show up to this, 500,000 people.
Yeah, something like that.
It's huge.
I mean, it's like
a
12 days.
Yeah, it's a huge event, and you know, so it's funny that it's a very large event in the Western community. Yeah. But
how many other country songs are written about rodeos other than
Frontier Days? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's a very famous rodeo. When we were standing in the food line last year, some girl that was behind us, I thought she was kidding, so I laughed. But she's like, "Who's this? I keep seeing these T-shirts that say Lane Frost. Who's Lane Frost?" And I was like, "Shh." Don't say that too loud.
So, all right.
But it's the younger generation that, you know, she was probably in high school, so it's just funny that. But I think she learned probably relatively quick. By the end of the day, I'm sure she left there being like, I got a pretty good grasp who this is. But yeah,
should get a shirt that says like, "Who the hell is Chris Ledoux?" Wear that around the CFD. See how long it takes me to get punched in the face.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're gonna wear some risky shirts tomorrow. I can't imagine wearing that one. I don't even know if you'd make it in the gate.
You might not. They'd be like, "Hey, you have to turn that shirt inside out. It's offensive."
It's against the policy. Yeah. But yeah, so that's what I'm excited for, is the chuck wagons and of course the concert.
Yeah. I think this is the 127th year of Frontier Days, something like that. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Are some of those wagons that they were restoring, are some of those like original to that? Like,
probably.
Yeah, I can.
Original to Cheyenne.
Yeah, that's nuts. So there's there's probably families that have relatives that
Yeah.
think these are heirloom pieces
Yeah.
to them.
There's a couple of like show teams of draft horses that'll be in the parade on Monday, and there's one team, they're all black. It's a 8-horse or 10-horse team, all black Percherons, and like some of the like nicest looking harness work and rigging on them. It's a pretty cool
Hitch.
sight.
Sweet. Yeah, and I'm assuming all these wagons are all have a hitch, like they're all hitched up.
Yep.
Yeah.
A lot of them, they're light wagons, so they're like a pair of horses, or they're like a lot of the little wagons are single donkey.
Which was common back in the day too.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, everyone wants flashy horses nowadays, but like there was a lot of mules putting in the work to build this country 150 years ago.
Maybe you'd need an oxen to pull your hardware cart.
Yes.
You'd be the only one.
Yeah.
Like I haven't ever seen anybody with an ox team in Frontier Days.
You need to buy that lot over there.
Yeah.
You need to buy that lot. Put some oxen. This needs to be a loafing shed again.
Add on.
Yeah. Yeah. Have a pair of oxen. Yeah.
The Forest Service had their show team in town a couple of years ago for Frontier Days. Their show pack string, so it's like 2 riders, and they probably had 20 horses all loaded down with pack string loads, and just the Forest Service show string's pretty sweet to see.
They keep that just for promotional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They don't use
They take it all around the U.S. for parades.
Wow, what a job.
No kidding, right?
Yeah. I don't know. I can't even believe that exists. That's like the most badass thing in comparison to like Budweiser Clydesdales. It's like there's Budweiser Clydesdales, and that's pretty cool because those horses are just there for promotional work and to be the Budweiser Clydesdales. But like that's
and I'm sure that those Forest Service horses are ones that they've used in the field too.
Yeah.
And the mules. Last time I saw it, like the whole mule string was all like matching, like buckskin colored white nosed mules.
So cool. That's so cool. Huh. Yeah, so we'll have to do that, definitely. Cool. Well, where can people find you?
I'm on Instagram, Wyoming Axe and Saw. I've got a website, Facebook, all those places, and Brandon tags me a lot of times in stuff that we're working on together or other things. So should be pretty easy to find.
Yeah, for sure. I'll drop some links in the description of this video, so that way you guys can easily find his socials and website and all of that. Hit him up if you need anything. Hit me up if you can't get a hold of him. Hit him up if you can't get a hold of me.
Right.
Yeah. So, So, thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandon.
Yeah.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Have a good one.